The Dog That Dug for Dinosaurs, a True Story, written by Shirley Ray Redman, illustrated by Simon Sullivan. A long, long time ago, there was a little dog named Trey. He was black and white all over. He had friendly brown eyes and a very wiggly tail. Trey lived in England. Trey was a real dog, and this is an honestly true story about him. Trey loved two things most in the whole world. First, he loved Mary Ann Anning. She was 12 years old and lived with her family in a small cottage near the beach in Lyme Regis. Secondly, Trey loved going with Mary Ann to dig for fossils. So, what are fossils anyway? They are the remains of animals and plants that died a long time ago. When a leaf or a bone gets pressed between layers of sea mud, it leaves an imprint. After many, many years, the mud hardens to rock. Trey and Mary Ann knew that they would find the very best fossils high up on the cliffs around the beach. They climbed up there every day. Trey sniffed the rocks. Sniff, sniff. He pawed the dirt. Scratch, scratch. Mary Ann used a hammer and a chisel. Tap, tap, tap. With these tools, Mary Ann carefully cut fossils out of the cliff, just as her father had shown her. Trey watched as she placed the fossils in her basket. Most of them looked like seashells. Mary Ann and Trey sold them as souvenirs to the tourists that came by stagecoach to swim at the beach near their home. One day, Trey and Mary Ann discovered some very large bones sticking out of the rocks. They were huge! Trey growled and tried to dig the bones out. Mary Ann used her hands to brush away the loose dirt. "Trey, we've discovered a monster," she declared. The bones were much too big for Trey and Mary Ann to remove by themselves. "I'll go for help," Mary Ann said. "You stay here, Trey." Trey barked loudly and sat down in front of the bones. He was a very good guard dog. Mary Ann ran all the way back to town and asked some grown-ups to help her. "Trey and I have found something really special in the cliff," she told them. "Just wait and see." When the men saw the giant rib bones in the side of the cliff, they were amazed. "What a beast!" they cried. "Look at those sharp teeth." "Is it a crocodile?" one man asked. "Or a stubby whale?" "We don't know what it is," Mary Ann admitted, "but we know it's something special, don't we, Trey?" Trey yipped and wagged his tail. A rich man who lived nearby heard about the sea monster. He hurried to see it for himself. "I'll buy it," he cried. "I will give it to the British Museum in London." "Do you know what it is?" Mary Ann asked. "It is called an ichthyosaur," the man told her. "That means fish lizard," he explained. "It's like a dinosaur with fins." The amazing news spread about the gigantic fish lizard and the dog and little girl who had found it. Soon many strangers came to Lyme Regis where Mary Ann and Trey lived. They all wanted to hunt for fossils too. The men wore tall top hats. The women wore frilly bonnets. They carried pretty little umbrellas called parasols. Mary Ann shook her head and smiled. She rubbed Trey's soft ears. They watched the strangers together. "They don't have the right tools," Mary Ann whispered. "They were wearing the wrong kinds of shoes. Aren't they silly, Trey?" Trey yipped and chased his tail. Curious scientists visited Lyme Regis too. One man came from the university in Oxford. His name was William Buckland. He went to the old carpenter shop where Mary Ann and Trey sold their fossils. "Can you show me where you found your ichthyosaur, young lady?" he asked politely. "Do you think you could find the exact spot again?" Trey can find it, Mary Ann boasted. Together, Mary Ann and Mr. Buckland followed the little dog across the beach and up to the cliffs. Trey sniffed the rocks. Sniff, sniff. He pawed the dirt. Scratch, scratch. Suddenly he yipped. Then he sat down. Mary Ann pointed. It was the exact place where she had discovered the strange fish lizard. "What an intelligent dog," Mr. Buckland declared. Trey wagged his tail. Trey and Mary Ann continued to dig for fossils. They were very careful. Mary Ann watched for falling rocks like her dad told her. Trey looked out for storms and high tides. Then one day they discovered another giant creature. "Look, Trey," Mary Ann cried. "Is it a sea dragon?" Trey sniffed the skeleton and snapped at it with his teeth. The creature had a long, long neck. Its backbone was like a humped turtle shell. Instead of feet and legs, it had 4 large paddles. But it wasn't a sea dragon. Mr. Buckland called it a plesiosaur. One day, Trey and Mary Ann found a fossil that no one in England had ever found before. This one had huge bony wings like a bat and a long, sharp jaw. Trey growled. "It looks like a gigantic flying lizard," Mary Ann declared. The scientists thought so too, and that's why they named it a pterodactyl. That means lizard with wings. Over the years, Trey, Mary Ann, and Mr. Buckland became good friends. They showed him where to find the best fossils in Lyme Regis. Mr. Buckland brought books about dinosaurs for Mary Ann. He brought beef bones for Trey. Mary Ann, with Trey on her lap, studied her books every day. When Trey's whiskers turned gray and Mary Ann was all grown up, they still collected fossils and sold them in the old carpenter shop. There were boxes and baskets filled with fossils on the floor and on the shelves. Some of the fossil creatures were so big they couldn't fit through the door. Sometimes children and tourists stopped in to buy fossils of ancient sand dollars or tiny fish and curly shells. Many scientists came to the shop to buy fossils too. They brought carts and wagons to haul away the really large ones. Once a German king stopped at the shop to buy fossils for his collection, and so did the Duke of Buckingham. Trey and Mary Ann Anning became very famous. Today, if you go to the Natural History Museum in London, you can see the large fossils they discovered together. You can also see a famous painting of Mary Ann holding her fossil basket, and Trey, the dog that dug for dinosaurs.